Hi, everybody. So welcome to the 7-2 launch party. This is the autumn issue of Chestnut Review. I can't believe we're already in volume 7, um, but that's how it goes. It's so great to be here with you all today. We have some great readers who have come to read their pieces from the issue. And of course, we have many more pieces and beautiful things to check out, including art. Without further ado, let's get started. The first reader is going to be Diana Fenves with Zaza Alone.
Hi, thanks. Never done a Zoom reading before, so we'll see how it goes. I guess let me know if something goes horribly wrong. This story is called Jaja Alone. Sarah lives in a city of dick pics, goes to work and commutes on a train of dick pics, comes home to a pile of unopened dick pics. They force themselves into her inbox and open, starving for clicks. She missed the payment on her ad blocker again. The body parts all blur together in one fleshy sameness. Last week, she got high on canisters with her date. She embarrassed him when she failed to recognize his signature nudies in a pile of naked shots. They're also very desperate. When Sarah's not at work and not forcing herself out for IRL dates, she's hunkered down in her beige apartment, booting up her simulation. She slips on the most expensive thing she owns, her top-notch headset and sensors. In the sim, she is Zsa Zsa Gabor, resplendent with a beauty mark, heavy blonde dyed curls, and an exotic accent. She goes through husbands like tissue paper. Her perfume is suffocating and unforgettable. As Zsa Zsa, she is without filter, all ambition. Her perfume is whoops. She drives drunk with her mouth open, hungry for the fresh air in her Rolls-Royce convertible. She is Zsa Zsa on the porch of her rambling estate, sipping tea out of heron china cups and crushing the precious saucers under her heels because they are all of them stealing from her. The feel of her stilettos is painfully decadent. As Zsa Zsa, Sarah is the queen of Hungary, the belle of her family. She personally stitches a life for herself in Hollywood that leaves room for her sisters and mother, all running flat-footed out of the Budapest ghetto and tugging on Zsa Zsa's silk robe like children. Pale blossoms in comparison to her entrancing celebrity. One of the last of the Hungarian Jews, Zsa Zsa is an endangered bird chirping a song no one understands, a mating call that attracts lonely tycoons. Zsa Zsa always has company. All Sarah has is a freezer full of Zap Skinny meals and a talent for awkward pauses. Sarah could never escape the Nazis. She can't even go 2 hours without Wi-Fi. Sarah even loves the melancholy of Zsa Zsa, signing divorce papers and letting her daughter's phone calls go unanswered. She sips Tokai under the portico at midnight. She purses her lips in a Zsa Zsa pout and wraps herself in furs, too rich to care about streaming overages and her bullshit cubicle job. Zsa Zsa doesn't need profile pics or nudies to post to dating apps. She reels lovers in with a toss of her golden curls. She blows cigarette smoke out of her mouth in tight little clouds. She pushes her way through to the front of the line and tilts her head just so, away from the camera, to convey sultry mystery. When the sim is over, Sarah tries to hang on to that Zsa Zsa confidence. She takes off her headset and ignores the frizz in her hair. She sucks in her breath through her teeth like she's smoking an invisible cigarette. Sarah had been eye flirting with a newbie 3 cubicles down with her from her. Sometimes they stare at each other. She opens her mouth to say literally anything, but nothing comes out. She's going to send a pic over just as soon as she takes the right one, a shot that says there's more to me, and also I'm hot. Sarah sets the stage for her naked photos by taping a tapestry of ruby red tassels to one of her bland walls. She adds a fake beauty mark to her pale face. She puts on a bikini at the last second. She never has the courage for full nudie. She props herself on her elbow and angles her body in increasingly awkward poses, waiting for her beauty to spill out. She puts on the X-ray style skeleton like filter like she's hip, but they come out forgettable. Looking at her shots, she can tell she's no Zsa Zsa. She wondered if this is what Gabor meant when she talked about we peasants. She agonizes, should she send them to her crush or maybe her ex? No, she can't. She invites the hacker bots to carry off her snapshots. She boots the sim up as the pirate code eats away at her face and turns her hair blonde. It's better this way. She'd rather be clickbait. In the bowels of the internet, her edited photos are already mutating into a phishing scam. Sarah buries herself in her stained couch cushions, pretending she's surrounded by sensual furs. She dies that way, mummified in her headset. The stale suburban air bleaches her bones platinum. An influence turned Netflix star plays Sarah in a documentary about single women who die alone in apartments. In the movie version of Sarah's death, she isn't in her comfy sweats, but is instead stark naked and several notches prettier. Lips pursed, eyes big and teary. Her bare shoulder is tragic but alluring. Sad electronic music plays as the naked woman is entombed in her IKEA furniture. Stats roll across the screen about thousands of post-adolescent females who succumb to this phenomenon, their beauty immortalized in cloud-hacked nudies. Somewhere in Bel Air, Zsa Zsa Gabor's mansion sits empty, its copper roof turning turquoise. Thank you.
Thank you so much. What a great reading of the piece as well. I think that really, it's always great hearing it live. Um, yeah. So now we have Sean Masachowski with Inheritance. Um,
Hi. I'm just getting it up 1 moment. That was a good attempt at my surname as well, one of the better ones that I've had.
sorry. Yes.
No, it's fine. I had to learn to pronounce it myself because obviously it's inherited, which is actually the name of my piece, Inheritance. So yeah. Mama pounds spices with a worn pestle from the market. I watch her hands, wrinkled like the skin of an elephant, turn fresh chili to dust, and wonder what she endured to break something so easily. She cracks eggs, delicate as a surgeon, and scoops the throwaway shells into a bin made from old bags. Mama, look how my hands mimic yours, crushing spices, pills, people beneath them. She sighs, mutters in Nyanja, life will break you, Mwana, if you let it. Look how we ration sadness, press it into paintings, poems, memories. Look how we channel it into something called exotic, the taste of being offered as foreign, picturing a life where we cradle emptiness like a bowl we keep refilling. Thank you.
Thank you so much. What a beautiful reading of a beautiful poem. It's just stunning imagery throughout. Um, so next up we have Cheyenne Man with Saint Dogfish 97. This is a longer work, so we're going to hear an excerpt, but I really encourage you to go and read the entire thing. Yes.
Thank you. Also, my cat is kind of all around right now, so sorry if she gets in the way. I'm just gonna start at the beginning. It was mid-afternoon when the coyote attacked Dog. A day so beautiful it could be named Jane Doe, had the kind of sky where Slaughterhouse thought perhaps there were workers who got up before the sun and climbed into the atmosphere to paint the clouds on. She threw a tennis ball into the bush, and Dog chased after it so happy he nearly managed to escape gravity. When it happened, it was fast and simple. A gray blur, a snarl like a broken lawnmower, a yelp Slaughterhouse would spend the rest of her life trying to forget the pitch of. The coyote got a nasty bite in the thick meat of Dog's thigh and looked like it was going to lunge again. Slaughterhouse, in her panic, kicked the thing as hard as she could, felt the wet, warm crack of it in all her molecules. It was the first time she'd hit an animal. The whimper he let out sounded just like a dog's, like dogs. Coyote got up, stumbled a few feet over, grabbed the tennis ball, and limped off back into the green lungs of the woods. His walk was curved in the brain-damaged way. Slaughterhouse was a shitty farmer, but even she knew that Coyote wouldn't survive past tomorrow's sunrise. It had all been over a tennis ball. Coyotes had a different amygdala than canines, but apparently you could never take the puppy out of the brain. Slaughterhouse picked up Dog's 60-pound wriggly golden mass and ran like hell to the vet supply she kept in the swine barn. It's okay, she whimpered to the crying dog. I'm here. You're here. Slaughterhouse was a farmer, and any animal her damn good-for-nothing vet touched ended up dying. So she cleaned out the wound herself, stitched it closed, set Dog up to heal on the comfiest part of the couch. Most days, Slaughterhouse felt like a dogfish. She was weak-jawed, 5 foot 10 inches, and the only thing that ever really liked her right away was dogs. She hunched her shoulders when she walked, like she might swallow a cloud on accident or press a hand against the sun like a stovetop burner. During the harvesting season, when she was taller than the corn, she imagined screaming so loud it drowned out the cicadas, the sound of her ripping vocal cords killing off all the songbirds in Iowa. But Slaughterhouse loved the birds, and she didn't want to kill them. She didn't want to kill anything, so she stayed good and quiet. Slaughterhouse felt like an animal on the day she met Jane Doe. It was 4 months before the coyote, back when Dog was still a barely leashed joy grenade. He whined his happy cries on the drive back to Cedar Rapids. Slaughterhouse only brought him into town for one reason: the pet store. Jane Doe was looking at the wall of bubblegum colored betta fish in plastic soup containers like it was a rock concert. She was a foot shorter than Slaughterhouse and had patchy gossamer gloss half smudged across the upper part of her lip. She was scrawny and dishwater blonde, and her skin was warm toned and so pale Slaughterhouse could trace the rivers of green veins down the loose curve of her legs. Her shirt was 2 sizes too big, and her cherry red cowboy boots had never seen a day's work in a pasture. She had sunglasses on indoors, little pink ones shaped like flames. Just the sight of her left Slaughterhouse burned, but wanting more, like homemade moonshine. Dog pulled on his leash when he saw her, practically dragged Slaughterhouse over, and Dog was always so good she could never bring herself to extinguish his sporadic flickers of rebellion. 3 of the fish are dead, was the first thing Jane Doe ever said to her. Her voice scratched like an old record, all vocal fry and light particles. The gold one in the corner is rotting. The decaying fish was smaller than the others. Its tail was less a sail and more a paddle. In life, it may have been orange and gold and filled with enough spite to challenge every reflection that dared to move its way, but in death, it was sallow and still and belly up. It never saw the ocean, never saw the sky, never saw anything besides plastic lids and Iowa. Slaughterhouse worried the stranger was going to cry, but she shook her head and rubbed the sorrow off on the back of her right hand. There was a silver ring on her middle finger in the shape of an octopus. She stuck out her other hand to the left, and there were no rings on that one. Her eyes were 2 living animals that buried their teeth into Slaughterhouse's neck. I'm Jane Doe said. Slaughterhouse said, and shook. And I feel like that's a good place to stop.
Thank you so much for the great reading of this story. I mean, yes, this just like going so many different places in such a great way. Yes, so please, if you have time, you can check out the rest of the story. It's amazing. Spoiler alert. Yes. Yes, I don't think Felix came, but we are going to read his poem, Mother Tongue, Foreign Mouth. Yes. Um,
Mother tongue, foreign mouth. After precious Ukimchi. No matter how fluent I attempt to become, high test scores, perfect phonemes, colonizer tones, my tongue still folds like laundry stored too long, a wrinkle of home too difficult to iron out. A BBO lives in my gums, in the redness beneath my teeth, quiet as a bruise, so that no matter how far I travel, visas, footnotes, borrowed bodies of grammar, my grandfather's name still refuses to sit on a foreigner's tongue. ECHIET, 3 vowels, body warmed by 3 consonants. Say it again, they ask, as if repetition would make it easier to swallow. They say there's a crack in my accent. They hear it, but I don't. My words are always foreign, even when to my ears they sing in key. How much of a foreign body am I? God, this is not babble. These are not flames, no sudden misunderstanding. Only the slow erosion of meaning when a child forgets how her grandmother prays. Thank you.
Thank you so much for stepping in and reading the piece, Luke. Yeah, there's a recording associated with this, so if you would like to hear Felix recite it himself, yes, I really encourage that. Right. So Lael MG could not be here today, but wanted to share this artwork with us, and I have something to read. Um, so I can't like simultaneously share and read these things, so I am going to hopefully try to paste in her note. See if the whole thing will paste. Yes. Okay. All right. So I think I can. I think I can do this. Yes. All right. So here is the artwork. And I'm gonna just right. So first is her statement of process, right? So Child's Play, created using a digital pen, Medibang, and an Amazon Fire tablet, depicts a young girl dressed predominantly in red, holding a doll. The doll is also dressed in red and covered in a rose pattern with a rose in its hair. Right. And her statement is, I believe that my art draws its power from the sheer lack of seriousness. Things that are often associated with comedic entertainment, like comic strips and cartoons, heavily influence the style I use to represent daunting and painful emotions. I feel that a certain level of disconnect from expectation helps make art more moving. It is because we don't typically associate girlhood with violent shades of red and vengeful resentment that the bitterness of a young girl toward a doll, or perhaps towards the woman the doll symbolizes, feels more poignant. In our real lives, pain hides itself in the most random things and surprises us like a jack in the box. While I also use my art to create magazine covers and comedic works like my comic strip Sketchy Business, I think my standalone pieces have the most emotional impact because they tell a story of their own. They do not rely on context from anything, even reality, to be made whole. Right. Thank you for your kind attention. I think I did forget to share this link if you want to check out more of Lael's arts. She is also a writer. Um, all right. So finally, we have Titi Kusamandari with How Was Your Week? Um, and this has a Tales from the Queue that was written by Erin, and Erin is here to share it with us today. Yes.
Hi, yeah. So this piece is about a narrator working through her father's death. And when I first read How Was Your Week, it happened to be my own father's birthday. He's alive, but the piece naturally made me think about when he won't be, and it fused my reading experience with a layer of pondering how my own family's dynamics and cultural expectations will be impacted when death inevitably comes. What struck me most were the descriptions of the everydayness of a sudden death, the details that could happen to anyone, like not bringing enough underwear and accidentally wearing a dress unfit for the climate, and life ending at 10:30. The subtle through line of the narrator being partially estranged in lines like, everyone moved as if on script, except for me. I mouthed the prayers I never learned, and as for my few remaining friends at home, speaks to a complex human disconnectedness that everyone who returns home feels at some point. The theme of the battle between grief being either communal or personal, but ultimately having to be both, was what really made this piece stand out in my queue, layering a first-time experience for the narrator with the sudden revelation that this actually happens to everyone else in their hometown every day. And I really had a fun time reading it.
Thank you so much, Erin. Thank you for your attention to this piece, your analysis, and for coming and reading it here today with us. All right, so I am going to go ahead and read the piece. How was your week? My mother made a shrine in the living room, my father's large headshot below the TV. No flowers, no incense, no offering. She just puts on YouTube and plays his favorites. Often I sit there, unsure what it wants from me. On a Tuesday not so long ago, he had told her, "See you, be back at 4," but left life at 10:30. He lived to teach. He died while teaching. And that was that. Here, the dead must be buried as soon as possible, often on the same day. "Please wait for me," I texted my mother, then ran to the airport, not bringing enough underwear. One stop, and 24 hours later, I arrived on time at the funeral house for the requiem. I rested at the back, but was pushed to occupy the front row. Everyone moved as if on script, except me. In the spotlight, my father, 6 priests, and the country's only cardinal, so I was told. I didn't know who was who, only that one acted as the alpha. I wasn't devout enough to care, nor defiant enough to scoff. I mouthed the prayers I never learned, and the alpha looked back indifferently. The following day, I think it was a Thursday, we took him for a last ride to the university. The last place where he was and is, not a was. They've arranged another mass and a string of speeches, ranked like a ladder. Board members, rector, deans, professors. I half listened to the big words that meant little to me. He had worn many hats in these halls, but never as my father. My mother cried, maybe the first time in 10 years, not even when she had her chemo. I sneaked out for a cigarette. My aunt got angry. Don't hide, she said. When the speeches finally ended, the casket was closed. It was pushed back to the ambulance, bound for the grave. In front, 2 police outriders blared their sirens, paid to split open Jakarta's heavy traffic. It was time for him to rest, yet nothing was at peace. Unprepared and in a hurry, Mother had settled for a public cemetery. It is always muddy, chaotic, and hot, but close to home. Like all cemeteries, the plots were divided by faith, Muslims with Muslims, and Christians with Christians. Where would I belong? Children flew kites, goats grazed on the city's rare open space, stalls sold coffee sachets and neon-colored powder drinks. Bordering it, a school, blasting English lines with a loudspeaker every so often. 1, 2, 3, 4, good morning, everyone. What pedagogy is this? My father would have frowned, but then again, he was already dead. Our convoy arrived at the cemetery, the ambulance, 2 buses, and dozens of cars, bringing flower boards, bouquets, and red rose petals in rotten baskets. The grave swelled into a hill of flowers. I wore a new black dress too thick for the tropics. They prayed again and started to sing. I prayed too, that I'd soon be left to grieve. But like all Asian gatherings, it wouldn't end without a photo shoot. With every click, I smiled on cue. Scrolling through them later made me angry. I didn't look sad, not even pretty. I learned of his death from a friend who read it on a group chat. It circulated fast, every step filmed and forwarded. No pic equals hoax. And so the fall, the stretcher, the ambulance, the corpse, shared by colleagues, students, and strangers. Only this time, that corpse was my father. Friday morning, we returned to the grave, expecting stacks of fading flowers. Instead, we found trash, plastic wrappers, and water bottles. The flowers and baskets were gone, looted. Whatever still had value must have been taken, given a second life for the living, and most probably resold by dawn at the cemetery gates. I've often said, eat the rich. What if the rich were me? A groundskeeper told us the goats had eaten everything. Goats don't eat rotten baskets. They don't leave plastic bags, my mother snapped, still bitter that my father broke his promise to be back at 4. I've never known how to tell this story to my friends, the ones who live a 24-hour plane ride away. The rituals, the looting, the ranks, and the pictures. Thank God you live here now, in the neatness of Europe, I imagine them thinking. They've long decided that there is horrible. I've always replied, it's just very different. As for my few remaining friends at home, this story is not worth telling. It's just how things are, they'd shrug. Clearly, this is the first body you've had to bury. I look at my mother's living room shrine, his pixelated face mid-laugh, the YouTube video she offers, his name in her search history, and I let her be. Uh, Thank you so much for writing this. I'm sorry about my on off the cuff reading. But yes. All right. So we have many other wonderful pieces in the issue. Our second Tales from the Queue is on lung canary. And so I really encourage you to go and read the rest of the issue, take a look at the artwork when you have a second. And thank you so much for contributing. Yes. So we're going to move into our discussion. Please don't be shy if you have questions or just things you want to say to each other. Yeah, and also to us. We have some great readers here today, Shadrach, Wes, Aaron. Thank you so much for showing up. And Samira is our communications manager at Chestnut. So she does an incredible amount of work keeping our socials running, our newsletter, our Patreon, and other things. So yes. Please feel free. Um, Sean, could you talk a bit about the process of entering the language in inheritance? Because the images and the poem itself, right, are so deceptively simple, but the images are so concentrated and focused around this idea of inheritance and this proud feeling of like what came from the mother. And I think that that just like the image, and then in the middle, right, that hinge of like, Mama, look how my hands mimic yours. It felt like a really powerful thing. So then when we get down to the emptiness and the bowl, it just really all aligned thematically in such a stunning way. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, so I often find with my poetry, it does concentrate on those smaller moments that often come across as simple, but actually they hold like the deepest truths. And I find that as I've gotten older and become a mother myself, I suppose I've looked at my mother a bit more closely, and then seen those subtle um, differences, but those really strong similarities as well. And I found that I wanted to write about that. And one of the things I watched her doing a lot while growing up was cooking. And within her cooking, it was nearly always sprinkled with some kind of chili or spice that I often omitted from my own cooking because I'm not very good at it. And it just really got me thinking about, living in a diasporic experience and how that's been, and growing up in the UK, as you can tell from my accent, but then having so much of this heritage and so much of this culture from my mum's side, and feeling both sides so intensely, but also feeling so separate from that as well. And I guess inheritance was kind of a way to reclaim my experience in it by looking at those small things that I didn't realize I was noticing so much throughout life. And then it suddenly became so clear to me in that moment when I was watching her. And I chose her hands being wrinkled like an elephant because she grew up very close to an elephant sanctuary in Zambia, and she often told us a lot of stories about it, and she'd laugh about how she didn't want to become wrinkled like the elephant. So when she read that poem, she was actually slightly offended, but I did tell her it was more of a metaphor than anything else. But it was just how there's those moments where you realize that you've inherited things that you'd rather have resisted, but then you realize just how incredibly difficult it must have been to move to another country, and have that experience, be rejected and embraced all at once, and just how much that impacts your life without necessarily realizing that it has. So I wanted to sort of convey that in those small ways, but like you said, that impactful language, like the crushing spices, pills, and people. And I just really realized how much I do mimic my mum in certain ways. Um, and the beauty is, although there's evolution, I think there's also evolution with reverence, that you need to look back to be able to realize how you have evolved and move forward from that inheritance.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I wrote down that line, right? The inheriting things you'd rather have resisted. I think it's really something to think about for those of us with parents who are getting older, and what are we going to preserve, but also like what are we going to miss from the person? And so like what do we need to maybe get knowledge of now, or what things are already kind of lost in transmission. It's just beautiful. And I find that your piece resonates a lot with TT's because you're both living in other places and sort of navigating okay, there's like some things from over here, but then some things from like where I am now, that I think is really a thread of like cultural alienation and bewilderment. So hearing about the context of your mother going to a different country and then going from the place that was elephant adjacent to something completely different, like it was really beautiful. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
I have a question for Cheyenne, which is, so there's something really, one of the things that is so cool about Saint Dogfish is the sort of the way things are named. So obviously Slaughterhouse and Jane Doe are great names. But then there's also the added dimension as the story progresses that all the animals are named, dog is named dog, and the fish are named fish, and the pigs are named pig. And I was sort of curious, like, I guess my first question is like with these characters, did the names come first and then the characters, or was it the other way around? And also like, I guess, how did you sort of arrive at this idea that like everything in this piece is sort of named what they are? Where Slaughterhouse is named Slaughterhouse because she feels that she's so violent and that, there's this horrible scene, where spoiler alert, the dog dies. And yeah, I guess I'm just curious about your thought process there.
Absolutely. One thing I'm really curious about is how to use name in fiction in unconventional ways. Often when I read a piece, it's kind of ironic. Like I almost never remember a character's name, even if I really loved the piece or read it multiple times. It's just not something that sticks in my head. And so I sort of approach names as kind of having an all or nothing meaning in my own writing. They either have like a heavy importance in the story, or I like pick a name out of a hat. And I usually prefer having a name with like heavy importance. Ironically enough, they had their names last. I think this was a piece I workshopped for school, and I think I decided on their names the day before it was due. They went through like a couple of different variations, had very normal names, and it just wasn't right. And I knew I wanted something different. And so I was just thinking and nothing came to mind. And then all of a sudden I was reading the Richard Sykin poem, Wishbone. And there was that part where it's like, I'll be your slaughterhouse. And I was like, that's it. She's Slaughterhouse. And then from Slaughterhouse, I've had this obsession of naming characters Jane Doe. Like I once wrote a story where every character was named Jane Doe just to see what would happen. And I think there's a lot of resonance in that name. And I thought it paired really well with this idea of slaughterhouse. And then all the animals just sort of folded from there. It ties a little bit into this underlying religious imagery in the piece and the idea of Adam naming all the animals. And once you name something, you get attached. So it was very intentional, but also kind of like a last minute stroke of aha. But thank you for your question.
Is it okay if I ask another question of someone?
Yes, 1000%.
Yeah, I also have a question for TT. So I know you kind of mentioned in our sort of correspondence that this was sort of written down to sort of make sense of this event that had happened. And as you think about that, I'm wondering, there's so many wonderful images in this piece, and that you kind of shared with me like some of the images that started the piece. But now I'm kind of wondering, as you return to it, as you're hearing it read, are there images that sort of stick in your mind after you've read it? Do you have like something now that you've written it? Like, is there something that your mind kind of keeps going to? And are there images in this piece that you sort of discovered were important to you in the process of writing?
Thanks, Annie. I think overall, it's looking how do you get looking again at that week, it's like um, a mix, like it's like scenes from a movie that just keeps on, coming out without actually any chronological order. So I cannot see, or it's difficult for me to see just like one image that keeps on coming back, but everything all at once, like a storm, just like kicking me in my face. And I think that's a little bit how I wrote it. But looking back, it still felt like that. Like it's not just one thing, it's just a lot of things at the same time, and things that are surreal that we never really thought about. The confusion, the you know. So I think that's what I try to capture. It's not one thing, but like just the multiple dimensions. Thanks. Does that answer the question, actually?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think that's something that we all kind of felt hearing this read out loud was just so much happening.
I have a bit of a follow-up question on that, actually, if that's okay, TT. Um,
Sure.
so in the piece, you seem to hover between like witness and participant, sort of like from observing
Yeah.
your father and the rituals around it, I guess with both intimacy and distance in a way. So when you were writing, I guess the question I wanted to ask is, were you trying to understand your grief, or to understand the way grief is shaped or distorted even by culture and ritual?
That's a very difficult question. I think what I was trying to, I think there are several layers that I tried to understand. First was the whole week itself. It's, jet lag, time zone. I couldn't make sense of anything. Like, really? Is this happening? Something like that. And then I think I tried to make sense of grief as well. It's a little bit like I think Didion mentioned when she wrote The Year of Magical Thinking, like nothing makes sense. So you just have to put it on paper and try to make sense of it. It's like I couldn't make sense, like all the images that of a cemetery, for example. I watch TV. I watch Western TV. Like I know the idea of what a cemetery should be. It's not like what I saw here. So even the smallest thing, like I wanted to wear a black thing, I look beautiful in it, but it was so very warm. So I also needed to make sense of that. So it was everything all at once, and like I don't know. There was a cardinal. I didn't care, but people seems to kiss the ring, something like that. So I had to make sense. Why do people kiss the ring of a cardinal? So I think it's about making sense of the whole rituals. It's a West meet East ritual as well, because you have like a lot of Eastern rituals, there are Western rituals. It's all combined into one. There's all the picture taking that is very Asian as well, and I try to make sense of that. So I think it's trying to make sense of everything at once, and then understanding the feeling, that the layering feeling that was there, that was present. Yeah.
Thank you. I just felt like it resonated with me so much because I had a very similar experience when attending a funeral in Zambia. So it was just, but the way you wrote about it was just incredible.
Yeah, I will say I think you really succeeded at like centering these very specific details that feel like these recorded little molecules of moments, but then also having like a really coherent through line. Very powerful. Yes.
Thanks.
Gonna ask another question because you can't stop me. No, I have a question for Diana also. And so one of my favorite things about this piece was the reversal towards the end where we realized like, oh, she died. And the thing that I don't know, there's so much to love about it, but I think that what I'm wondering is, did you write with that ending in mind? Or did you realize as you were writing it that Sarah was going to die?
Hey, sorry, I have a reading crasher. I know there were no guests allowed, but she came in anyway. So thank you for the question. Yeah, this ending was definitely like a later addition. Yeah. It's and it took me kind of a while to figure it out. I feel like I was marrying kind of two different experiences, but I think it helped me remember the most important thing maybe about Zsa Zsa Gabor for me and about my grandmother who was a lot like Zsa Zsa Gabor, which is just not to take it too seriously. And the expression in my family from that that my grandfather used to say a lot is that life is hopeless but not serious. And so I just needed like a hopeless but not serious ending. And when I finally found it, it felt really right.
Yeah, and I think the thing that's so cool about that ending is like all of the best endings, it feels inevitable. It feels like once you get there, not predictable, but like once you get there, of course, this is how the story has to end.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah, it really did. It felt earned. I think it's really it's hard to make a flash that feels like so long and like it contains so many things. But I think that we have three great examples of flash in our issue this time around, right? Because both Jaja and like Antifreeze I would say like it's a lot of the time like you read Flash and it's like okay there's clearly just one thing that's happening and the author's like aiming for that one thing to happen. But I think it's amazing when there's like two or three really juxtaposed things and then there's so many like different tumbling dimensions of like womanhood maybe back then versus today like this idea of like the lost sophistication of like the Hollywood age and like the generational gap between like women who were like I'm literally on my deathbed, but I need to like put makeup on and stuff. And like people today who are just like, and it's like totally a different time, right? I think the sweatpants joke earlier that you made, Annie, like it's just like, yeah, there's so many good lines and details about embodied feminism, embodied femininity, and then, the digital age. I think that's one of the things that is really well captured in the piece because even if what Sarah is doing is like more fictionalized or it's not like there's not like quite a real world analog, like we all do these things when we put on our headsets and like it's so funny like the line where it's like that's the most expensive thing that she owns in contrast to someone like Zsa Zsa or like someone from that generation where it's like okay that's not true at all. Yeah. Well, I think unless we have other questions, we can happily kind of go on our way. It has been such a wonderful time to talk with you, to hear you read your works, to discuss these pieces with you. So you are part of our Chestnut family now. Thank you so much for sending your work. Thank you for your kind attention to our edits. And of course, like editors and readers, thank you so much for your efforts because without you, the magazine would not exist. Um,
Absolutely. Maria,
yes.
before, I'm so sorry, I wanted
Yeah,
to
no,
ask if
no.
you don't
Yeah,
mind. I
not
always
at
like to
all.
take screenshots, but it's never fair because someone's always looking off to the side or whatever. So I wondered if it was okay with you if we could just take a maybe 30 seconds where I could take a few screenshots amongst the screens since I don't have everyone on the same one. Would that be all right?
Yeah,
And if
yeah,
not,
of
of course, you
course.
can turn your camera off, as Maria said.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I'll begin the screenshot process in just a second. Ready? Just smile how you'd like. All right. We got one down. And then let's get the other one. Hang on a second. Moving on over. All right. Let's take another one in about 3 seconds. Three, two. Okay. I couldn't say one because I was already there. So there we go. All right. I think we're good. Yes.